We detect languages in modern applications. Language detection and linguistics is everywhere, and today we'll be looking at the solutions that we've got, the offerings from Microsoft AI, as well as the alternative solutions that we have available. Welcome to today's show. It is hosted by festivetechcalendar.com, and we are trying to collect monies for charity. So please have a look at this website here and do your best. Otherwise, a happy new year and a Merry Christmas. Cool, let's get started. So about myself, my name is Dieter. I am working with Azure technology for quite many years, based in London. If I don't spend my time geeking and studying and playing around with technology in the weekend, I'll be likely scuba diving, hiking, or traveling. Good. Would you have any questions after this? You are very welcome to reach out on the QR code here. I've got a blog as well, so do not hesitate to reach out. Now, linguistics technology is everywhere available, and you might not know it, but it's literally everywhere. So I pulled off a couple of examples to understand the importance here. We are looking here at the left side at a document that's a standardized form in the European Union for a car crash, I think. We've got someone from the Netherlands, someone from BG Belgrade, and those people are trying to file a claim for their insurance, right? The insurance company wants to digitalize the documents, assign it to specific agents, understand what's happening, but also all the documents that we potentially want to digitalize, extract information there is what's being used, right? On a personal note, we've got personalized communications such as agents or chatbots that we have available, that's being able to serve you in your language or your dialects, as well as the smart devices that we have available and we are all widely consuming. So those are a couple of samples here, and many of those examples are really starting by extracting what the language is specifically, and there's a big need for that. And why is there a big need for that? Obviously because we are dealing with a globalized environment right today compared to 20, 30 years ago. There's a big difference there, and we want to handle data in a multi-language fashion more efficiently, right? And why do we want to do that? Because we want to either automate business processes, we want to use natural language processing, chatbots, translation services, extraction services to automate business, to provide a much better and faster support or reduce costs, but also potentially to enhance user experience, right? To provide personalized content, personalized communication to the user is really driving business forwards. So just to summarize here, having access to globalized collaboration and more faster, accurate optimization is what we are looking for. And language detection is one of those bridges towards a more globalized future, effectively. Now, to summarize it once more, we've got enhanced accessibility because we are able to provide multi-language context extraction automation in a global fashion, and the automation is at the end of the day often what we are looking for. Automation through technology, and that's why we are here today, isn't it? So looking at the techniques that we've got available, I'm not able to add all the techniques to this slide, but there's basically two large language detection techniques available in the market today. So the first one would be based on statistical text analysis, and Ngram is one of these examples, right? Typically they have low computation requirements, and it is fairly accurate, moderate accurate. It works quite all right. The results to be expected is okay. And this is one of the samples or one of the example algorithms that we have. It's called an Ngram model, and an Ngram model is able to extract key points from a sentence and match this with a dictionary. And for example, this is an N2 model, a bigram. In this case, it's extracting this is a and a sentence, right? And then this is being compared with a dictionary. You will see that the words such as this is a fairly typical English kind of combination. There is no such thing in Greek or Italian. So that's what's being used to kind of match the search and match that with a specific language. So that's just one of these samples. It's all statistical text analysis, best guessing based on some algorithm that's available that's being written. That's it. It's fairly lightweight as well, so good to play around a bit of locally. But is it suitable for business production? We will look at this later. On the other flip side, you've got natural neural networks. to be expected with a high accuracy or higher accuracy than any statistical analysis here. Reason being is they really made a huge comeback. It'd be much better, the performance and the results compared to, let's say, 3 or even 5 years ago. Hence the reason why we need much more compute power nowadays. So this is what we call the AI services here. That's available, and we will be looking at those two things as well. Cool. So a bit more on the technical side, right? Really keeping those things in mind. We'll be looking at a demo about something open source. I've selected 2 open source frameworks that are fairly popular. We've got NTextCat and PanLingo. The first one is based on Ngram, so statistical, analytical analysis of the language. The second one is based on AI neural networks, right? That we've got. These 2 are open source. There's also paid versions available from other solutions, of course, and it's a library for offline support as well. Then the other solution, we will be looking at the cloud offerings from Microsoft Azure, right? So here we've got AI language services. It is available under a per consumption model, or you also have commitment tiers if you're using quite a lot, right? And then we've got some limits, and later on we will be looking at how does this work for a kind of a disconnected environment, but that's after the demo here. Cool, so let's get started. What do we want to compare? So I'm mostly interested to see how accurate are those solutions, right? What can we expect? What kind of performance are we expecting here? And what's the total cost of ownership, right? So comparing those 2 solutions with each other is really what we want to have. I've added the links also in the slideshow in case you want to look it up as well on your end. Cool. So the first thing I want to do is look at those 2 solutions that are available, NTextCat and PanLingo, those open source solution frameworks that are fairly popular, right? That's being used for those text detection or language detection. The NTextCat, in this case, if you actually browse to the repository, and this is a good demonstration on how those things are working, you can actually open the dictionary or part of that dictionary from a specific language, right? So you see that, for example, for English, we've got things such as the here, or er, or some of the other combinations that's being matched with the text, and it's nothing more than a find and, you know, the amount of weighted hits that's being returned. So that's the first kind of setup that we will be looking at. The second would be PanLingo, fairly common used repository as well. They do provide wrappers for other non-C# based libraries. So there's a couple of options here, but today we'll be looking at specifically, this implementation. Why? I want to have a test with a neural network as well, see how that performs, and then looking at, comparing those 2 together. Now, in terms of implementation, fairly straightforward for both solutions. You do have to host this solution, however, in your own service. So I've got fairly easily just 2 serverless functions available. Just load in the NuGet package and provide that language detection with the body there. Both solutions are fairly easy to implement. There's a little bit of caching from the constructor here, but that doesn't change much. And this is then the implementation for NTextCat. Fairly similar, fairly short, and also available for free. Cool. So those are hosted within those 2 Azure functions with their own application plan and serverless. And I'm a little bit interested to see how does this perform. So let's have a look and calling those services under a function. Cool, so this is returning a Spanish text, fairly good. If I call this a couple of times to remove that cold start. Performance wise, we are looking at, 30 milliseconds, 25, 40 sometimes. So that's what we've got available over here. Really good. And then, so that's what we have here. Question, how does this perform under kind of a shorter text? Always good to know. You see how this doesn't really perform very well. Yeah, so typically those solutions, they don't really provide a lot of accuracy when you provide very short text. That's what I've noticed. So that's one solution here. The other NText is fairly similar. As a result, you will see that I'm able to send some text here. I'll call it a few more times to remove that cold start. In terms of performance, we've got very similar, between 30 to 50 milliseconds. Again, this is from my local network. So if you're using, you know, kind of more of a direct approach with the client being closer, that obviously changes, right? This one. So again, from a quality point of view, how does this perform on like a smaller text? How does this changes? High seems to be in Netherlands. I don't know. Sure. But does this make a lot of sense? This seems to be Norwegian. So there's a little bit of fluctuation around shorter text kind of approaches there. Those solutions typically recommend you to go for larger texts because they're not very much trained on shorter kind of text solutions there. I think performance-wise, fairly good. You do need to do your own setup, so it does come at a bit of a cost, but they do provide offline capabilities, so that's fairly good as well. That one. Now let's look at what can we use from the Azure offerings there, because obviously, as we've seen before, you know, the demos is quite nice, but accuracy doesn't seem to lack a little bit, right? So in order to use that within the Azure context and Azure offerings for AI, we've got a language resource over here. We've got an endpoint, and then really providing that with the security keys here. One can actually really provide a REST call. And in this case, I've got this REST call already set up in this solution here. We are looking at the same exact text in Spanish, and looking with a couple of calls to see how that goes. Fairly similar performance here that we've noticed as well, again, from my local client, right? So we've got what, between 30 and 50 milliseconds, fairly similar as well. Interestingly enough, they also support bulk support. So if we try out, for example, 3 documents, how would that perform effectively? We will see. It's obviously interesting because with document digitalization, we are often looking at bulk data processing. And then looking at the results here for 3 documents, which does provide, well, in this times 3 times Spanish, you will see that the performance of this application does not go down. So that's really good to know, especially if this is really one of your concerns. Performance stays very similar or the same, I would say, for even bulk requests there. If we then look at kind of the accuracy here, from that point of view, how does that work out? Even with shorter amount of text, fairly good. Let's just put a high. This is really limited, but anyway. Even with a couple of typos, this still seems to go quite well, I have to say. So as we see, the accuracy on, you know, the quality of this is way better. It performs much better than the open source solutions that we've seen on the other solutions. Even with shorter amount of text, it does provide bulk support as well. So that's really useful. And in general, I think this is definitely the way to go for any kind of business approach that you want to do. In terms of pricing, we've got a free tier available as well, 5,000 transactions per month available, and otherwise it's a standard tier where you will be charged as a per consumption model or per 1,000 requests, basically. Cool. There's maybe one open question, Cha. How do we deal with this with sensitive data? How do we deal with, you know, kind of GDPR kind of point of view? I want to have more control over my data as well. So how does that work out? There is offerings as well for both offline mode and limited broadband usage. And this is what you can do in containers, right? So there's 2 solutions there. We've got solutions available for obviously both needs, as in, hey, I want high throughput, low latency point of view, lots of batch data processing. Or maybe you want to have more control over your data, more custom control over what's being deployed, what are you effectively using there. So that's also an offering there. And then one of these samples is basically, you know, a ship that has limited internet access, potentially a surgery room or something highly critical there. Even just anything else where, you know, one needs high throughput and low latency, or for some kind of compliancy reasons, you're unable to submit that sensitive data to the cloud. And you really want to bring that, you know, keep that, I would say, in your either on-premise center or keep it in the cloud on your own service. That there's also an offering for that. Now, how does it work specifically? We've got AI service here that's being hosted in a container instance. Could be Kubernetes, whatever you feel your container, you'll be using it. If you're using the connected services, it will be sending billing data towards Azure every 10 to 15 minutes. So it's just to report the consumption, right? And you can also connect it to application insights and log analytics there. Now there's a Docker repository available, and let's have a look. How does this work? What can we see here? Because that's quite interesting, I think. So this is the Docker repository here with all the containers that we can download. And actually, I did set up one of them locally here as well. So that's rather interesting. And as we see here, we've got two offerings. One from the latest download I had from 2 months ago, and one is from a couple of years ago. And why do I say that? Because the latest one, the image is from 1 month ago, and the other one is from 2 years ago. And you see a big change in image size, and there's also been a big change in quality here, quality offerings that's been provided. So it goes up from 5 GB to 22 GB, which does imply the quality increase that we've been seeing over the past couple of years. And that's a good sign, I think, right? So that's the offering. You can do the hosting online. You can do the hosting on your own platform. In my case, I did do some setup here on Azure with container instances, right? So what are we looking at? You just need a little bit of information and configuration here in order to make this work. So I've got the image that's being, the image that's being pulled from this repository here. I've got a couple of ports. I did initiate 14 gigabytes of memory here, and then looking at the configuration here. We do have some keys that are available in order to make this work, and especially for the billing information. So that's the setup, fairly straightforward. You download the image, and then you're really good to go. And the beautiful thing about this, it's being offered with a Swagger as well. Now the Swagger has this endpoint for language detection, which then you can use just like the other solution in the cloud. But they also have two other REST points available as well, which is the ready endpoint and the status endpoint. Now, both of them, you can use them for a health check, especially from your Docker health probing. So that's interesting. And then look at how this works effectively. There is one endpoint here, the ready endpoint, which we can call. And then it provides an endpoint here. The status, is it ready or not? How does it work? Good. And then the other solutions also that we have to really test what's going on with the language detection. We've seen that before in the clouds. It just works exactly the same. Now the solution is hosted in a container. So that's the only difference here, but still interesting, right? Okay, so I guess we've seen all the solutions here available here, or especially the solutions that I've been checking out and using it. Would you have any questions? You're very welcome to reach out to me on the chat on private, and otherwise have a very good year.